of establishmentarians have been shaken by the results of Alabama's GOP primary. Alabamans voted decisively for populist Judge Roy Moore in the runoff Senate election, and the judge's win is clearly being taken as a profound, unmistakable warning to all establishment elites and rhinos, particularly those in the Senate. Alabama voters dismissed the Chamber of Commerce, the powerful Business Roundtable, all the big money that was pumped into the race. Moore won by nearly 10 points against incumbent Senator Luther Strange, a former lobbyist who is no stranger to the D.C. swamp. Moore's win even more impressive when you consider that Mitch McConnell and the Republican establishment pumped $30 million into propping up Strange, paying nearly $150 per vote that Strange won. Moore won by double digits, and impressively, he won 63 of 67 counties. President Trump today quickly embraced Moore, complimenting him for running a great race and saying he is sure to win December's general election.
Well, we have a man who's going to be a great senator, and I'm very happy with that. I spoke to him last night. I never met him. I never spoke to him. I'm very happy with him. And I have to say, Luther came a long way from the time I endorsed him, and he ran a good race, but Roy ran a really great race.
And Moore's victory is a big blow to Mitch McConnell, who is having one of the worst weeks of his 32 years in the U.S. Senate. Aside from backing the losing candidate, McConnell yesterday was forced to call off a vote on the repeal of Obamacare, his third failed attempt to muster 50 votes in the Senate. And hours later, one of his allies, Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee, announced he wouldn't seek re-election in 2018, an exit that creates another open seat that anti-establishment conservatives are likely to target with gusto. Already, the Bannon wing of the party has expressed interest in ousting Republican incumbents such as Arizona's Jeff Flake, Nevada's Dean Heller, and Mississippi's Roger Wicker. The midterm elections are already underway, and populism, economic nationalism, proving to be powerful forces already. Marginalizing the chamber and the Business Roundtable, no small feat. It's also very likely to overturn the Republican leadership of both the Senate and the House. President Trump today unveiling the roadmap ahead for tax reform, hailing the plan as a revolutionary change for our middle class.
This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. We're going to cut taxes for the middle class, make the tax code simpler and more fair for everyday Americans, and we are going to bring back the jobs and wealth that have left our country, and most people thought left our country for good. We want tax reform that is pro-growth, pro-jobs, pro-worker, pro-family, and yes, tax reform that is pro-American.
Our next guest playing a big part in tax reform. He's a member of the so-called Big Six, the group negotiating over tax reform since April. He's here now to discuss whether Republicans can pass the Trump tax reform plan in the wake of repeated failures to enact the president's legislative agenda. Joining us tonight is Congressman Kevin Brady. He's the chairman of the powerful House Ways and Means Committee. And first, Congressman, good to have you with us. Simple, less taxes, it all sounds so good. What could possibly go wrong?
Look, this is an exciting day, and I think the historical day. Americans have been waiting 30 years for a president to lead and a Congress to unify behind bold Reagan-style tax reform. Look, I'm proud to stand with President Trump in this bold effort. Look, President Reagan, that tax reform was game-changing. It took 2.5 years to achieve. We're seeking to do it in 1 year, and the best way we do it is get on the same page together with the president. That's why today was so important.
There are a lot of people, as you know, Mr. Chairman, who would question why it took so long for the leadership of both the House and the Senate to get behind the president's agenda instead of the better way nonsense and all of the other counter and conflicting currents that were running through our body politic. Is it clear now that the president is going to get what he wants from the Republican leadership in both the House and the Senate?
Well, the answer is yes, and let me just say, and let me just correct one thing. We jumped on the president's agenda. He wanted 15 separate bills to help roll back regulation. We got them to his desk. House delivered on health care repeal and replace. I'm proud we did. I'm disappointed Senate Republicans did not. But we've been working with the president now directly for the past 3 months, working toward a unified tax reform plan. We are on the same page. He's leading in a big, bold way. So I just tell you, in the House, our Republicans, we're so excited for delivering on this promise.
And I have to say, the Republican National Committee, the chair, Ronna McDaniels, coming out and supporting immediately the president's plan, getting behind tax reform, the House Study Group, the Freedom Caucus. I mean, you guys are learning.
Well, look, we believe people ought to keep more of the hard-earned money they earn. We think our businesses should be able to compete and win anywhere in the world, including here at home. And if we can cut taxes on our local small businesses and let 9 out of 10 Americans file using a simple postcard system, we're going to help change this country. So we're all in for this.
The brackets, the prospect of 4, but in terms of corporate and business pass-through rates, still not parity between corporate America and small business. That's a big issue to, amongst others, as you know, the National Federation of Independent Business. The small business folks, they deserve, in some ways, a bigger break than the multinationals in corporate America. Why can't you get to parity there?
So absolutely. Where is parity? We're proposing a 40% tax cut on local businesses, whether they're the smallest mom and pop just starting out or they're the biggest corporation. Both of those are the lowest rates in modern history. But we don't stop there for small businesses. So we make sure they can do full and unlimited write-off capital equipment. We end the death tax permanently for our small businesses. We're going to encourage them to continue to be able to deduct their interest payments. And we're going to make sure that more small businesses can just do simple cash accounting, just a simple way to keep their books. So we're going all in on small businesses because, as you said, there's such a big part of our local economy.
How soon are we going to see tax reform? When are you going to mark up bills and get it moving?
Yeah, great question. So it depends on the budget. No budget, no tax reform. But today, in the House, after Republicans across the spectrum saw how bold we're going, they signed on to the budget as well. So I understand we're going to move next week on this budget. Once it's signed, sealed, and delivered by the Senate in the House, we're going to move on tax reform.
Chairman Kevin Brady, as always, good to talk with you, and we wish you the very best of luck.
Thank you, Lou.
Thank you so much. We're coming right back with much, much more. Stay with us. Alabama voters rebuke the Republican establishment and vote for Judge Roy Moore.
I certainly support President Trump's agenda, and that, yes, I'm an outsider, not part of the establishment.
We'll take up the populist surge in America. Ed Rollins and Michael Goodwin join me here next. And a shocking new study reveals just how much illegal immigration is costing American taxpayers every year. We'll have the outrageous numbers for you and much more straight ahead. Stay with us. We'll be right back. The president says he's not happy with Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price because Price used taxpayer money for travel on private jets.
I am going to see, I'm looking at that very closely. I am not happy with it. I will tell you, I am not happy with it.
We'll see, he says. Price traveled on corporate jets at least 26 times since May, including a nearly $18,000 round-trip flight from Washington, D.C. to Nashville, where he had lunch with his son. Not happy, says the president. Neither are the taxpayers. Joining me now to discuss Tom Price's questionable leadership of the department he is the secretary of, his travel plans, and the fallout from the Alabama Senate race and more. Fox News contributor, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the New York Post, Michael Goodwin, Ed Rollins, Fox News political analyst, former chief political advisor to the House Republican leadership, esteemed member of the Political Consultant Hall of Fame, and good Lord, man, you're wearing me out just with all of your honorifics.
I had to live forever to get all those.
Well,
Many more.
well, pile them up, right? Exactly. Let's start with Alabama. That the president himself acknowledged in the endorsement of the incumbent that he thought he might be making a mistake.
Someone talked him into doing something he shouldn't have done. He's the populist president, and he basically endorsed the establishment candidate as opposed to Moore, who is the populist candidate. Moore will be a good vote for him. I think Moore will win the fall, and I think he'll stay there as long as he wants. And I hope it's a good lesson for the president that he has to be very careful who he listens to, because this was not his natural instinct. This was certainly the majority leader trying to force this race by throwing tons of money at it and the rest of it and not having any impact whatsoever.
And the reality, though, it seems to me, Michael, is that, you know, in a week, no one's going to remember this to pay much attention to it.
No.
Certainly not if the Republicans hold the seat, which they should. I think it will be a passing event.
I'll make you a bet. I'll make you a bet that President Trump makes sure that Judge Roy Moore is elected by a wide margin, no matter what it takes.
Yeah, there'll be no shortage of money.
Well, Moore is a good, smart guy, and he'll basically be close to the president when he gets here. He may not be close to McConnell, who did everything possible to make sure he
Well, he
didn't get
shouldn't
here.
be. McConnell is, McConnell is a disaster. He can't lead the Senate. He can throw, what, an estimated $10 million into a $30 million race on one side. All of that money going to Luther Strange, $150 a vote, and he still can't win.
For 45%, you got
Unbelievable.
Right. No, it was a big blow to McConnell. McConnell did not have a good day yesterday.
Yeah, and may he have many more, I think would be the expression on the part of the populace of this country and those who care deeply about this country. This may have a startling effect, I think, at least some people may be startled, on the direction of politics now in the Republican Party. It's a very clear message. Corker leaves his Senate seat next year, not waiting for anything. This is a time where it's becoming clear that the populist movement goes way beyond national politics and obviously to every state.
I think there's no question. I think Corker quit, or at least announced he wasn't going to run for re-election because he was fearful of a primary. I think a couple others are going to take hard looks at whether do I really want to go through the primary process. Do I want to basically have a very serious challenge to me, and they may leave before much longer too. So I think it's a new day in politics, and obviously the people are going to get to speak again, and maybe some people are going to listen to them.
I'm surprised, though, that something similar is not happening on the Democratic side yet. We haven't heard about primary opponents from the left, the Elizabeth Warren wing, Bernie Sanders wing, supporting against more centrist Democrats. I think that's coming, but I'm just surprised we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, well, you saw a generational presidential primary in the Democratic Party.
Right.
I mean, good. I mean, it's between basically a 70-year-old woman and a 74-year-old senator. It's the standard bearer. It's they're talking about all this nonsense about a new century. They don't know who they are, what they're doing, or how to do something differently, as far as I can.
They're irrelevant to the process at this point in time.
Yeah.
They will be again, but they're certainly right today. They're irrelevant to the process.
What do you figure? 2020, 2040?
Well, they have to find some new young people that basically relate to younger Americans.
Well, the ones they've trotted out so far,
no,
they haven't got a chance.
No, and the generation that's been running it won't get out of the way.
How about the Republicans? I mean, they've got a huge issue with these rhinos. Jeff Flake, Heller, Wicker, and the list goes on. All of these rhinos have screwed up frankly, the Senate to this point, in almost the House.
Well, the ones you mentioned are all going to have challenges. Flake already has a serious challenger, and I think to a certain extent the other two probably will too. So. I think again, the message yesterday was that there's a bunch of voters out there who aren't very happy, and the fact that you got Republican in your senator doesn't mean a whole lot if you can't basically produce.
Let's turn to the NFL and the president's demand that they go to hell if they don't start respecting the USA, which I love that. I love the leadership he has shown on this issue because it is the left trying to dismiss it as a culture war, as if it's insignificant, a distraction. But it's absolutely profound and fundamental to our politics in this country right now.
Well, culture is a very big part of our politics, and I think the president proved once again that his ability to read the public mood on these things is really unprecedented. I mean, I don't know that Ed and I were talking earlier. It doesn't know so much that there's a strategy as there is an instinct.
Yeah, why the hell does there have to be a strategy?
Yeah, but it's an instinct for where the
You've
public
got a bunch of corporatists who want strategies. They want this, they want that. Here is a man who is leading based on his personal values, his own vision of this country. By the way, out of 16 other candidates, which one had a vision? Only Trump. Only Trump had a position on issues. He's the one who established the groundwork and introduced the issues throughout the entire campaign.
And I would say the flag issue is very much consistent with America First. I mean, it is absolutely right down the middle of that lane. 1,600
employees on the fields for the NFL, and you'd think this was a big deal.
Well, first of all, the NFL wraps itself in the flag. They have these gigantic flags at the beginning of everything. They have hundreds of soldiers or sailors carry the flag out to the middle of the field. They have Air Force jets fly over them. They make a big deal out of the flag, wrapping themselves in the flag, and then they let 5 or 6
and they recently quit charging the military for the privilege.
Discontent football players decide this is the place they're going to make their protest, and I think that's they need to stop it.
I think it's irretrievable. I believe Goodell has shown himself to be the perfect ass as the leader of a group of millionaires who have absolutely lost their way. And by the way, I'm including players and the owners. To get this far into the ignorance of dishonoring our flag, our national anthem, and every member of our military. I mean, at what point does reason prevail here on the part of those malcontents and entitled and abjectly reckless fools?
I think only when it hits them in the pocketbooks, which is, I think, is what's happening now. And I think that's the only way to get their attention.
You going to watch any more pro football?
I actually watched a little bit the other night, but not much.
I didn't.
That's a big sacrifice for him.
I want to say again, thank you to AT&T and DirecTV, because that's how my wife and I watch football. We don't watch football anymore because we just simply canceled the service. We're not watching the NFL channel, any of that nonsense. We refuse to.
I repeat our slogan: stand up, we'll watch. Kneel down, we won't watch.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. But I want to say to AT&T and DirecTV for giving a pro rata refund to all who cancel. We appreciate it, and I think that is just nice leadership on the part of a corporation and 2 corporations owned by.
And the new tax bill. It's a new tax bill. If they take the corporate boxes away from it, that'll get their attention too.
Corporate America supports a lot of sports that, frankly, just wouldn't pay its way.
That's right.
All right. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Ed Rollins, Michael Goodwin. Be sure to vote in tonight's poll. Our question is, do you believe the strengthening populist wave will lead to McConnell's exit? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. On Wall Street, stocks up on optimism over the president's plan for tax cuts and a dismissal of those little fears about North Korea, which apparently were overblown by the business press. The Dow up 56 points, the S&P up 10, the Nasdaq up 73 points. Volume on the big board picking up to 3.4 billion shares. Apple's iPhone 10 may be in short supply when it is supposed to go on sale in November. The company dealing with a shortage of one of the components for its facial recognition technology. I won't tell you which one I know, of course, and could explain how it works, but we haven't time. Pending home sales, 2.6% lower in August to the worst level in a year and a half. A reminder, by the way, that's primarily because of low inventory. Listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. Up next, some progress on one of the president's key campaign promises. We're closer to building that wall. The full report from the border. Here next. Stay with us. Trump supporters would have liked to see ground broken on the border wall on Inauguration Day. Today, they got at least a peek of what it will look like as the government announced the beginning of construction on 8 prototypes. Fox News senior correspondent Adam Housley at the U.S.-Mexico border with our report.
It may look like any other construction site, but this is the beginning of President Trump's long-promised new border wall, one he began to tout from day one of his campaign a little more than 2 years ago.
I will build a great, great wall on our southern border, and I will have Mexico pay for that wall. Mark my words.
The process now involves 8 different wall designs being constructed outside of San Diego by 6 different companies. Congress has already coughed up the money for the prototypes, but will need to approve billions more in order to use one or more of these designs to complete the wall stretching from the Pacific Ocean all the way to the Gulf of Mexico.
History shows that border security is an achievable objective when we have the right kind of policies and resources in the form of law enforcement personnel, technology, and border infrastructure.
Roughly 650 miles of fence or barriers of various types already exist along the border, with about 1,300 miles still needed. Average construction cost so far has been more than $3 million a mile. But the project is not without controversy. The feds and local police departments are planning for protests, though none have materialized so far. And just last week, the state of California filed suit, joining immigration rights groups and environmental activists in their opposition to the Trump wall.
Although we're an environmental organization, we do see commonality with other organizations fighting other elements of the Trump administration's approach to immigration issues and border security issues.
After 30 days, the evaluation process begins just a few feet from a degraded wall that agents say is ineffective and old. We're also told some companies may wait a couple of weeks to bring their designs out.
Yeah, it's time for so many of these Republican establishment types to take a knee and take a hike themselves. And yes, I think that we are going to see that ripple effect. In the case of Alabama with Roy Moore, it's not simply that he was anti-establishmentarian. It's that the people of Alabama, the voters, trusted his record on so many issues, including traditional values and sovereignty. And it's perfectly in line with this very important battle that President Trump has drawn a line in the sand in with regard to the NFL. It's about standing up for America. It's being unapologetic about it, and we will see it in other races, particularly in Arizona, where Jeff Flake, who's been on the wrong side of so many sovereignty issues, now faces an outsider, Kelly Ward.
I can't think of an issue he's been on the right side of, to tell you the truth. Senator,
Exactly.
He is beyond, he's inexplicable. Let's turn to another inexplicable group, and that's the NFL, the players, some 1,600 of them, their ownership and their management, taking leave of their senses, insulting Americans, insulting the flag. This is outrageous. Their own bylaws call for them to be standing at the sidelines with their helmets in their left hand. And I would urge their right hands over their heart. And this is what you're watching. We haven't heard anything, Michelle, about any kind of fine or punishment or discipline. I mean, it's appalling what we're watching.
It is, and that's such a great point that you're making, Lou, about their selective enforcement of their own rules, because so many people in law enforcement remember when the NFL forbade the Dallas Cowboys from honoring the cops who were killed in an ambush that was in part inspired by Black Lives Matter type militant rhetoric against cops. And that's what so many of these owners and so many of these players who are going along like sheep with these kneeling gesture movements are forgetting, that this all stems from Colin Kaepernick, a man who wore socks that depicted cops as pigs, who sported in defiance a T-shirt of Fidel Castro and praised the education system there over America's. This man is insane, and people are not understanding what these gestures are endorsing, and the fact that they're doing it overseas is all the more noxious.
Michelle, thanks for being with us. This is a fight the president will win.
Yes.
I can't tell you how long it's going to take, but he is absolutely resolute and right. Michelle, thanks so much.
We're the land of the free because of the brave. Let's not forget it.
Amen. Michelle Malkin, always great to talk with you. Thanks for being here. Be sure to vote in tonight's poll. Do you believe the strengthening populist wave in this country will lead to Mitch McConnell's exit? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Please roll the video now as we show you a stunt driver. Whoa, what a road he picked. Making his way up Pikes Peak in Colorado, testing every jaw-dropping edge and guardrail, it seemed. A 1,000-foot drop awaited him at any possible mistake. Impressive, and for the record, a 1,400 horsepower twin-turbo Ford Mustang. I wouldn't need quite that much power to navigate that road myself. Probably 50 would be enough for me as I went up about 30 miles an hour. Up next, suicide bombers attacked Kabul's airport. And guess who was there and who the target was? Secretary Mattis landed in Afghanistan, an unannounced visit, but somehow the Taliban knew something. We take up the war on radical Islamist terrorists. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer joins us here next. And what is the latest for the deep state? Yes, they're still hard at work. We're coming right back.
This program is brought to you by
the Taliban targeting the Kabul airport this morning, just hours after the surprise arrival of Defense Secretary General James Mattis in Afghanistan. Fighters using rockets, grenades, suicide bombers in the strike. U.S. and Afghan forces repelled the assault, killing 4 of the terrorists. The Taliban later claiming Mattis was the target, although he had already left the airport, we're told. For more now on the situation in Afghanistan, the latest on the Russian witch hunt, and, of course, the deep state. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, now a senior fellow with the London Center for Policy Research. Tony, good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, let's start with General Mattis. I mean, for crying out loud, the Secretary of Defense lands an unannounced visit, which everyone thought would be a surprise visit, obviously not to the Taliban.
Right. Well, look, we have here a situation where we are more and more relying on our allies, the Afghans, for purposes of comprehensive security. It's not working. We've had a number of green-on-blue attacks where we've had members of the Taliban who have been infiltrated into the ranks of the Afghan military, and this is going to continue. And in this case, I think what was more significant is this was a joint, by their own admission, joint ISIS-Taliban attack. So much as we've been successful in defeating al-Qaeda, to a great extent, ISIS has just rolled right in there, taking al-Qaeda's place as one of the enablers and supporters of the Taliban. So clearly, we have to do something to change the way we're approaching this, because clearly we've been there for, 16 years, and we ain't won yet. We got to figure out how to do something here.
Yeah, it's troubling because the president has given General Mattis a free hand, if I can put it that way, too. With force levels, with whatever strategy is required to kill the Islamic State and the Taliban.
Yeah.
3,000 more troops most recently added. And here we are repeating many of the same mistakes. Yes. And to see rockets being fired at our Secretary of Defense in this situation is not a comforting sign.
No, and let me be blunt. One of the factors that this Pentagon is not dealing with, and look, I've spoke to a number of senior leaders on this, is Pakistan. Lou, the bottom line is this. We have pretended that Pakistan is somehow our ally, and yet I'm sure once you do the forensics of this attack, you're going to trace everything back to the Pakistani border and to training areas and safe havens in Pakistan. So it's kind of like you keep cutting off the wart and never get below the skin to get actually the root out. And until we change that, nothing's going to change.
That is one of the most elegant metaphors that you have.
Oh, thank you, sir. I'm good with words, so there you go.
You are a wordsmith in addition to everything else. Let's turn to Tom Sure, who has said of Judicial Watch, who wants a second special counsel.
Right.
To investigate Mueller. We're hearing now that from the Judiciary Committee in the House, Bob Goodlatte, Congressman Goodlatte, the chair, he wants a second special counsel to deal with Loretta Lynch, with Hillary Clinton. The list goes on. Nothing is happening, and the Republicans control the White House, the House, and the Senate. What in the devil is going on?
Well, let me add to that list. Look, we need to look at Jim Clapper. You and I spoke about Jim recently. I was speaking to a member of the Trump team who was in the meeting with the president and Jim Clapper when Jim Clapper first briefed the president on the Russia issue, and completely 180.
I've got no problem. Throw Clapper in there. He's lied so many times. He lied.
Right. So the bottom line is there's ample, overwhelming amounts of information here which indicate.
Where is the Republican Party in the House and the Senate? Why aren't they governing, and why aren't they having an impact and setting the direction for these investigations?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. And Lou, this is the bottom line. The president is going to have to do something to figure out a way to influence allies on the Hill to do this. You've got the Jim Jordans and Mark Meadows, and frankly, you've got people over in the Senate, I think,
and Paul Ryan. Don't forget Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell in the Senate.
Well, the problem is
who hate the president's guts.
That's the problem. The leadership, you've got troops within both the Senate and House who want to do this. I talk to them on a daily basis. And, you know, look, full disclosure, I was meeting with Steve King from Iowa yesterday on this very topic. So the issue is not that you don't have members who understand this. You have a leadership layer, this fat nougat layer, to use another metaphor, who just simply don't want to do their job. And that's the problem here. So it's a political will issue. It's not a legislative issue. It's not a legal issue. And that's where we're at.
It's a deep state issue, and it's leadership in both the House and the Senate who have been bought.
And the appearance is
lock, stock, and barrel, and they are not serving the interest of the nation right now.
Right, and Lou, the deep state guys run both. I mean, the leadership is deep state guys. That's the issue.
Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. Tony, great to have you here.
Hey, thank you for
a major problem that does have to be resolved. Up next, crooked Hillary Clinton now comparing President Trump to Vladimir Putin. What is wrong with this woman? We'll take up the failed presidential candidate's latest bizarre, I would call it eccentric, I would call it deeply, deeply troubling manifestation of something very wrong. Niger Ennis and Mercedes Colvin join us right after the break. We'll take that up. Stay with us. A quick reminder, September, National Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. If you can, please join the fight to help end cancer and donate. Go to curingkidscancer.org to make a donation to find out more. Again, that's curingkidscancer.org. In our online poll last night, we asked, do you believe the NFL will do what President Trump and the American people expect of everyone in this country and demand players stand for the national anthem? 75% of you say no, the NFL will not. Hillary Clinton continues to use the national spotlight to whine about her election loss, to criticize the president. This woman will not go away, and she is in some difficulty. Listen to her absurd comparison that she made, her reference to President Trump and a fellow named Putin.
I don't think he really values democracy, Charlie.
Okay, so he doesn't value democracy.
No, I don't. I think he's
not a Democrat, little d.
No, he's not. He's a top-down guy, and
he's an authoritarian.
He has tendencies toward authoritarianism.
So he's no different than Putin.
Well, he, hopefully hasn't ordered the killing of people and journalists and the like.
Really? Joining us now, national spokesperson for the Congress on Racial Equality and conservative commentator, Great American, Niger Ennis. Great to have you with us, Niger. Fox News legal analyst Mercedes Colvin. Great to have you here as well.
Great to be here.
What is wrong with this woman? I mean, really, because
unbelievable.
And it almost without comment in the national left-wing nut media.
That's not a joke. I know that there are people out there who support her and say it was a joke. It was no, that's not funny. It's not a joke.
She knew exactly what she
knew exactly what she was doing. If this were in a different setting, that's libelous. That's something. If you're going to accuse people of ordering killing of other individuals, of the media, of journalists, that's libel. You can go in and say, look, I may not be a public official. I'm going to sue you for libel. I'm going to sue you for defamation. It's absolutely outrageous.
Your take, Niger?
I have to concur. I think that she's hawking books, and she believes
that there is a party, her base, I suppose, of hyphenated victims, if you will, of folk who, for all kinds of reasons, are, see themselves, regardless of their station in life, and regardless of being a brilliant gladiator on the field that earned the millions of dollars that you're making, and the fact that you're doing extraordinarily well and a shining example of American success around the world, you somehow have to chime into victimology. Ellen DeGeneres today, or whatever time, she had Megyn Kelly on her program, and Ellen is no fool. She's a very smart woman.
This is going.
And she talked about the fact that she would not have President Trump on as a guest, and the reason she gave is because she's a gay woman, and consequently, she can't possibly have President Trump on. Well, first of all, this president, more than any other, certainly Republican nominee, and I would actually say Democrat nominee, actually went the extra mile in the convention to say he is in favor of LGBTQ. I probably didn't get the letters right, but he got them all right. I mean, come on, give me a break. Everybody now wants to be a hyphenated victim. It's outrageous.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, but if everyone took responsibility for their actions, there would be no lawsuits. There would be no jobs there would be no work for lawyers. So don't do that.
Niger.
Behave like victims. It's great. It makes it busy for lawyers. No problem.
It is also something that I'm not sure.
It's good for Mercedes practice, maybe.
Let's go to the biggest victims of all, the oppressed NFL players who make only millions of dollars a year, who've decided that they're going to follow Colin Kaepernick.
Yes.
Colin Kaepernick, I can never get that quite right, into oblivion. I mean, I guess they're going to give up those jobs because it would be insincere of them not to if they're so disgusted with the oppressive environment in which they live. I just...
This is the best country in the world. You want to talk about oppression? Why don't you go to countries where they don't care about human rights, and they don't care about individual rights, and they will oppress you. This is not an oppressive country. And, frankly, I know you've covered it, and beautifully, there are no First Amendment rights here. With respect, it has to be governmental action. There's all these people that are saying that it's First Amendment rights and freedom of expression, not when there's no governmental action.
When you've got a gutless wonder like Roger Goodell, just flipping the keys to the whole organization over to the players' union, are you kidding? He's holding no one accountable. It's in their bylaws that these players have to be on the sideline and respect our flag, respect this country and our national anthem, Niger.
What was most disappointing to me as a patriotic American was the fact that these players, and I think the black-white players over in the United Kingdom, that actually stood for the God Save the Queen.